Bored already then? Huh? Okay, time for something else. Don't worry, Apple always has things in store, so in today's video we're talking about what to expect at next Apple event, when to expect it, how to expect it, why to expect it, and who to expect it. Yeah, it makes sense. Let's begin. Just an overall reminder, spring events are not a guarantee, okay? These are not the type of events Apple does every single year, but given what we've heard about upcoming products and the fact that ever since the pandemic, Apple seems to be a little bit event happy, where they just want to, at a moment's notice, yeah, let's have an event for that, let's have an event for that. It doesn't even really have to be that interesting. It doesn't have to be that packed with information. They'll just kind of have events because it gives their marketing department something to do. Like in 2020, we had a couple events where they only really announced two things, some events that were under 45 minutes, which means don't expect a major packed event, but I do think we'll likely end up getting one in the later half of March. Most of the March events ended up falling on a Tuesday, and I do think this year was a bit of an exception. It was pretty epic, Tim, that we got a 420 event, but Apple has basically never done April events in the past, so I consider this an exception. I think in 2022, we will likely get a March event on a later Tuesday in the month, and what I personally think would be perfect, because we're going into 2022, there's also a Tuesday on the 22nd, which would just be all of the twos all at once. They would have two major products to announce in 2022 on March 22. Like, this is just too perfect to pass up, so I don't have sources or anything, but if I were a speculative boy, which I am, I'm gonna go ahead and place bets. March 22nd will be the event. I could be wrong, but I don't know, it just sounds very Apple-esque to just line up all the twos across the calendar. And yeah, as much as there's a bunch of Apple stuff we're excited for in 2022, like the new refreshed M2 MacBook Air, the refreshed Mac Pro, and my personal most exciting product, a standalone monitor refresh, a Pro Display XDR with 120 Hz. I'm pumped for all that, although it's not rumored to really be dropping in the spring. There's really only two products that we've seen consistently referenced that Apple should launch this spring, and that is the 5G version of the iPhone SE. Not terribly exciting, I hate to break it to you, but it's probably just going to have an A15 chip in 5G, which is going to be absolutely atrocious with that tiny battery life that the iPhone SE is rocking. Really unsure if that A15 chip is going to allow it to do things that it couldn't already do in terms of camera performance. Maybe they squeeze cinematic mode in there. Maybe they, at the last second, slap MagSafe support on the back. So, hey, if 5G drains your battery life like crazy, buy our $100 battery pack and slap it on the back. Yeah, it's not their brightest hour, but that's what's rumored to happen in the spring. And then alongside that, we've also seen iMac Pro talk a lot lately. Even in yesterday's video, I talked a lot about what to expect. But Ross Young, who is far more reputable than Digitimes, is expecting Apple to release an iMac of some kind that will be rocking a mini LED 120 Hz display on the 27-inch form factor, okay? So this would by far be Apple's largest mini LED display. I know you think the Pro Display counts, but for some weird display industry technicality, it doesn't count as mini LED, even though it's almost the exact same style of achieving high dynamic range. But yeah, if I had to place bets on this one, I would expect a slightly over $2,000 iMac Pro with black bezels, but likely still like a space gray chin of some kind. It will be rocking some legacy I/O on the back and probably start out with the M1 Pro chip, but you'll be able to spec it out to an M1 Max if you so desire. Some people have been speculating that this Mac will support two M1 Maxes at once, although I haven't seen that many analysts or leakers actually claim that. Just people saying, hey, it's a desktop, it can pull more power, so why not have twice the chips? And they may end up being correct. It would be kind of cool to know what kind of processing power you can get with two of those chips stitched together, especially given you could store 8 terabytes on each, so maybe an iMac Pro with 16 terabytes. If there's people willing to pay for 1 terabyte iPhones, you know there's people willing to pay for 16 terabyte iMacs. Would be kind of overkill, and yes, that would likely be well over $10,000, so expect the configurations to be a tad crazy with this one. However, I still think it would be a far better iMac than the 24-inch model, and there's certainly a lot of people looking to have a desktop rocking this next generation silicon, because Apple has so far only put it in laptops, which a lot of people don't want. Outside of that, they might sneak in a little Easter egg at this event, but as far as I can tell from the reports, those are the only two products that are like entering production now, and several sources are all claiming, yes, they're supposed to come out in the first quarter, or at least by the end end of March. So those two, I'd say, are pretty reputable, and we should likely expect those. But in terms of new iPads, I mean, the iPad Pros aren't that old yet, so I don't think we're getting new iPad Pros in the March. According to everyone who knows about the Apple Silicon supply chains, the M2 chip is not quite ready yet, so that would imply the M2 MacBook Air isn't going to be ready in the spring. I hope I'm wrong on that, because I do think the spring event where they announce all the new color watch bands and new colors for iPhone cases, that would be perfect with all the new colors for the MacBook Air. But no, everyone's saying to expect that in the second half of 2022. Perhaps because OLED may have been scrapped on the iPad Air 5, they might just end up refreshing the iPad Air at this spring event because it didn't get any refreshes this year, and it's very dated in the rest of the iPad lineup right now. It needs center stage. Come on, Apple. Makes no sense for the budget iPad to have it, but not the iPad Air. Also, it doesn't have 5G support, which the iPad Mini does, and it's cheaper. Also, the iPad Mini has Flash, which the iPad Air does not. So maybe give it a little bit of a spec boost as well. Perhaps throw in the Flash, the 5G, the center stage, and boom, you got yourself a fairly minor iPad refresh. But overall, those main two things of iPhone SE and iMac Pro are pretty much all that sound fairly likely for this March event, which is honestly kind of a very weird event. On one hand, it's like, today we want to talk about the iPhone, the cheapest one, and how we're giving it our most battery draining feature yet. And then they're going to transition really quick and be like, anyway, let's talk about the most expensive Apple Silicon we've ever made, which you can now spec up to over $10,000. And yes, it still comes with a stand, so you're welcome. This mini LED display is just as good as $42,000 reference monitors. We're really cutting you a deal here. And then that's it. That's the whole event. It's like minor iPhone boost and then giant iMac refresh. It sounds awfully weird. Makes me wonder if Apple's gonna instead move towards more of a site refresh. I feel like AirPods all got updated, so we probably shouldn't expect new AirPods at this event. So does this sound like something Apple could do? You know, in the past they had an Apple Watch and an iPad Air in one keynote, and that was it. It was over in basically an hour. Kind of weird. Those genres don't really go together very well. And before then, every Apple Watch always launched alongside a new iPhone. But in 2020, Apple broke tradition. So in 2022, are they gonna break tradition again? Makes sense to you guys? If it doesn't, feel free to let me know what you think the release cycle is gonna be like down in the comments. Do you think there will be a March event? What will be there? Or do you think we'll just get site refreshes and Apple will try to go back to having in-person events? All that false hope, let me know what you're thinking. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you all in the next one.